Hi. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting of the regular board meeting of the Kirkwood Meadows Public Utility District
Gotta go in without me.
order. Okay.
I'll be back.
Okay.
Is it okay?
I'd like to ask the Assistant Secretary to do the roll call.
Oh, I'm impressed. I have a function suddenly. Epstein,
Present?
Schroeder,
Here.
Mitarotonda,
Here.
uh, Dornbrook is momentarily absent. I hope he can join us later. And Peru present.
Okay, good. Announcements, Eric.
I'd like to wish everybody a happy Friday the 13th and would like to also note that it's bad luck to be superstitious. And if you'd like to speak on Zoom, use the raise your hand function.
Good. All right. So next item is corrections to the agenda. I have two. One is that we're going to drop 9G because Doug discovered it was unnecessary. That we've been charging for it all along, just in a very clever way. And then second, that we'd move items C and D to the after item I. Hopefully that will allow Rick to attend.
Yes,
He's on a fire call at the moment.
very much appreciate that.
Okay. Are there any other changes to the agenda or consent calendar?
I would like to move B and C from 7 because I have questions.
Okay. All right. Anything else? Okay. Next is comments from the audience, an opportunity for members of the public to address the board on something that's not on the agenda. Do we have anyone online or? Howard, I can't tell if you have something. No? Okay.
No
Nope.
one online, Bob.
Okay.
Everybody, we spook them or what? I mean, there's only 2 people.
I think we need more controversy if we want more than 2.
Okay.
Okay, written comments from the public, none were in the calendar. Okay, so we'll now move for adoption of the consent calendar, item A and D, the regular minutes and reauthorization of teleconference meetings. So motion. Okay, moved by Doug, seconded by John. Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, so it passes 4 off. Okay, so now items brought forward, we'll start with item B, the consent for claims. So you have questions?
Yes. So on the AP voucher, first on a side note, I mean, there is a typo that bugged me for a long time with the name of Shanahan. It says Shanahan. So I think we, out of respect for these people, we should spell it properly. There is also a satellite instead of a satellite. So just minor thing. But the reason I wanted to ask is page 17.
Shanahan, that name is as long as we can make it. So it's not an
that?
option. There's only so many spaces we have to put names down.
And will
So
be that way because that's as long as we can make it in PCS.
So there is a
It's
reason.
nothing to do with disrespect.
Okay.
Nope.
Or maybe you can remove a space to have this full name.
We'll get his name changed.
Okay, let's keep going. Page 17. So is that page 17? So I'm lost here.
This is page 7.
Board packet. It's are we page 17 at the bottom?
Page 17 right there.
Ross Canyon Engineering.
No, I think my page number is wrong. Let me find it back here quickly.
if you want the document number, we can pull it easier.
So maybe that's correct actually. It's in AP voucher. It is related to CC, the Caltrans Peddler Hill. So I just want to ask you, what kind of expense do we have over there? Page 17. But it's not page 17, I think.
It is page 17.
It's
It's,
17.
it's costs incurred for review of Caltrans project.
So it's an expense that we bill them.
This is billed to us and then we pass it through to Caltrans.
Oh, Got it. Thank you.
They will all occur like that.
Yeah,
So remember that for the future.
Sounds good. And,
I haven't
and
heard that.
that's it for the AP voucher. And now if you move to the page 32, I think, the secondary AR past due balance. So I see an SM 4111, which is 2 months behind. And they're just confused because I thought SM 4111 was the unit that we have at Sun Meadow. And so I just wonder what kind of expenses do we incur for that actually you are billing? I mean, typically I see SM 411 in the AP voucher, not in the receivable.
It's past due balances on utility bills.
No, but what
It's a past due balance on a utility bill.
utility bill? So we are not paying ourselves. That's what you are saying?
The employee is in arrears.
Okay. Okay. That's all I have for these two things. So I can move a motion separately or join to approve them. What do you think?
Well, it's one at a time. So
One at a
approval
time?
for 7D.
So my first motion would be to approve. Let me go back to the exact wording. Exact wording.
So,
Here we are. So I want to approve 7B, the current consent for claim.
I second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
And I move to approve the review, the receivable shut-off report, also.
Okay. I second that. All in favor? Aye. Okay.
Abstain.
Okay. That's fine.
Yeah, sorry.
All right. You're able to join us now then?
Yes.
Great. Okay, so we're now ready for item 9A, finances. Tommy, please take it away.
Hello all. So per the Finance Committee, we have been breaking out the operating other for more clarification. So that's on the first part of your overview and budget variances. The other thing that happened was there were two different adjustments that need to be happened. The second one was the one for the large credit, which no wastewater was ever, and no water ever hit the wastewater plant. So that expense never truly occurred, but the water that was forgiven is noted there. That was a board approved item. The other one was a miscategorized bill. We caught it as soon as it went out, but as soon as you enter bills, if the amount isn't right, we run reports after the fact, and it grabbed that dollar amount, and we had to adjust it off. So you'll see that adjustment in August numbers, and it's clearly noted the exact amount for water and wastewater right there. But then I broke out all the funds, and if you scroll down a little bit, Eric, there you go. So water, you can see that income in August, which is showing on the reports as a negative 5,963 to budget. It actually is better than budget by 4,000. Same with wastewater, was actually better than budget by 8,000. And that's the correction that was done in residential revenue of that dollar amount. Is there any specific questions though that I can address?
I do, but out of courtesy, I'd like to see if any other one want to speak before.
Questions for Tommy?
So the first thing it's a request actually. I would like to have the month and year on the page that you have your summary, overview, and budget variances. I know that for every other document, balance sheet and others, you always know which month you look at because you put August 31st, 2023. I think that page need to have it because once you start looking at several packet, it's very quickly confusing. So I think we need to tag which months we are discussing here.
We can do that. It's also laid out under each of the line items and says income in August. But we can do that.
Yeah, it's just to
If
make
you
it
can't.
easier to
Fine,
cross-reference things, yes. Another question, you mentioned that we have at the top, you say we have a $1,274.86 of credit card fee. Are you meaning charge?
That is income that we get and is then billed to us.
It's a pass through.
It's a pass-through.
It's a pass-through.
It gets billed.
So
to the
we do pay fee because
we pay fees and the customers reimburse it.
Reimburse us the exact credit card fees.
so
Paid
it's
by
really the
ACH,
fees.
it's much
It's
better.
not, it's really the fees. It's not the payment we got through
No,
credit card.
It's strictly
What
the
it says,
fees.
yeah, the credit card fees.
So for the readout, I have two questions. I mean, for the first, the wrong readout. So maybe it was said before, but I don't remember, and I certainly maybe I didn't hear. But what was the reason we had this such a big snafu of basically
Whenever you
100
do a work order, you have to read in, the meter will have a exact usage on it. That
Okay.
exact amount has to be entered before and after. If you are going a little too quick and hit a 0 at either end, it reads a giant positive number or a giant negative number. So it's just a quick
Okay.
error that throws these giant adjustments, unfortunately. We had
So-
this happen again back
So this
in
is a manual
December.
entry, basically.
Say that one more time?
This is a manual entry.
Yes,
Okay. And it was mistyped.
yes.
Okay. I was wondering how, because I thought we were doing remote reading and I was
Not
confused. But
all, not all meters are remote read.
yeah.
No.
Okay. So that's it for page 33. But I do have actually some problem on the. So we are talking about August here. And last packet in September, we're talking about June. So we have never seen July. And what I found difficult is because of this correction that you had to do up and down so it was overcharged in July and then you corrected in August. It really makes this comparison difficult because I cannot sort out.
So if you want to
The
scroll down
meaning,
there,
yeah.
there's an easy way to look at this. Scroll to any of the pages. Keep going to the income statements. So this is perfect. So you only have 2 months at the moment. So your year to date is August plus July. So if you subtract August from there, that is July.
Yeah, no, I understand that, but I
Okay,
still
I was
think,
just making sure you understood it.
I still, again, we have not seen July. It was not part of last month's packet, and it's not part of this month's packet. So I think it's important that if for some reason we have some delays, then we should catch up the following months. And here we basically skip over it. So are we going to get a copy for July at some point, or what's the plan?
Would the board like us to go back and do July? It's just more paperwork, even though we have the numbers here. Do you want
I
us to
don't need
spend
it. I
staff
felt like
time
I
on
could
that?
figure it out. I mean, it's unfortunate we have all these problems, but I can,
Correct.
I'm fine with what we have.
Okay, so Manek?
Yeah, I'm okay with it. I'd like to see us get the closings done faster and not miss months is what the issue is. And then the corrections make it harder to review as well. So there are a number of issues that make it more difficult to review the statements.
So if you had July, then you could actually look at things and say, okay, but the way it is now, I could not do my typical review because it's tainted by these big changes.
Yeah, the corrections make it
Yeah.
hard to compare.
Yeah. So So now if you go page, I think 35. At the bottom on the non-current liabilities section, we have a huge credit, 1.4 million. So since I could not see July, because we have not the same, so I don't know what it is. So I'm assuming this is a Ross loan payment. Is that correct?
That would be a long-term debt, yes.
That's another thing that's difficult to do if you don't have the month-to-month thing. So you cannot compare. Try to see what's happening here. Then my last question related to financial. I don't know if you want to further, you want to discuss first, but I have another question that which is kind of typically in October, we actually have some news on the audit. And actually last year in October, we actually had an audit. So I wanted to know what the status on the audit.
That will be in November. It's ranged between October and November
Okay.
for decades.
Yeah, but so it is in process because we have not heard anything about it. Yeah.
You have heard things about it, whether you listened or not, I don't know, but we've reported on it that we've been dealing with audits since June.
Okay. Okay, and so that's it. But again, I'm very uncomfortable. I don't know if we do a motion on that or an approval on that or not, but since I didn't see July and there is this big correction, I'm not comfortable moving forward on this thing as is. I mean, that's my point. Yeah, but we have an audit coming, so we'll see it before the previous year. So that are my comments.
Okay. Any other questions on 9A? Tom, you want to move on to September preliminaries and cash flow?
Please. So again, that adjustment that occurred, unfortunately, that hit positive in August and negative in September is throwing off your cash flows. So it's going to skew it. But you can kind of just get a little brief overview of the base rates are more in line with the help from Bob on that. Same with meter charges. But that's, and the property tax, obviously. But if you scroll to cash flow real quick, that's more of a better snapshot.
Maybe we should pause for any questions
Okay.
on preliminary income. Thank you.
So any questions on September income? Obviously
That's preliminary.
okay. Great. All right, cash flow then?
So cash flow, I mean, we always want to be above $1 million, as Stanish would always say. And I mean, right now in September, we were total operating cash of 2.8. So doing very well cash flow wise. We were budgeted at 1.5. So actually 1.2 over that at the moment.
We did talk at finance about bringing that back at the November meeting to finance to move that chunk back to Lathe. And that'll be back before the board in November. Is that right?
I'd highly recommend. Yes, I'd highly recommend. We'll get a little bit more revenue up in Lathe than we would if it's just sitting in a money market account.
Right now it's 0.21. If we ever switch to 5-star, it'll be 2, but Lathe right now is 3.1 last apportionment quarter.
Yeah.
All right.
The
Okay.
main, yes, property tax.
All right.
Did you
Yeah. So just one comment on the cash flow. I did say the same thing last time that it seems that we're hovering between 2 and 3 million in the operating cash, and I think in the past we are more hovering between 1 and 2 million. So I just wonder why we seems to be in a higher cash position. Do you have an opinion on that?
We literally just talked about that. We're we're moving it to LAIF. Normally we have it in LAIF. We haven't moved to LAIF. Finance is considering that at November's meeting.
Get a better interest rate.
Well, if I misunderstood, I can still understand my question. Pose my question.
Yes, and I just repeated myself. Yes.
Okay. Now actually this time I hear you.
Well, if you don't hear, let me know so we can all make sure you hear us.
Okay, we'll move on to property tax allocation.
So for property taxes, most of these were just making the funds back out to net zero. With the 450 set by Russ in terms of our O tier and tier ratios with the forgiveness. For water and wastewater, we did not have sufficient remaining funds to satisfy what was included in the rate study. So we took the proportionality included in that rate study and applied it to the remaining balance, which gives us 37,000 and 133,000 respectively for water and wastewater, which is less than what the rate study anticipated, but is what was left.
So I just want to clarify. So this is the proposal for closing out the last fiscal year.
Yes.
The allocation.
Yep. The year that ended June 30th.
Right.
Yep.
Would you say the reason for the water, like the wastewater and water is because of the electric needed
Yes.
extra?
That's
Yeah, the
that
electric,
and fire.
the electric should have been closer to 200,000 to 300,000.
All right. That's what was assumed in the rate study was
Yeah.
that. But then fire was much higher, obviously, because of the Measure. Even after the stipend augmentation from the 501c3.
So
Okay.
we are getting this past year we got 944K.
Yes,
So that was a significant improvement after many years of stagnation. So that's a good news.
it is helpful
Yes.
for sure.
Yeah. Mhm.
And we would,
There is TOT in here, of course, but that's a very small portion.
would we expect that number to continue?
You would.
Unless property said, yeah, unless people got reassessed based on property drops. So I would expect that number to continue.
Okay.
And we would, in the next budgeting process, maybe we would be conservative and just keep it right at 950 and not get too creative beyond that. But there is new construction going on too, which adds to the base as well.
Yeah.
So I think I would recommend, and we can talk about it next budget cycle, but in our assumptions, I would recommend we use 950 as our number.
Okay.
Which is conservative, but still better.
Okay. Good. Any other questions on property tax allocation? If not, is there a motion to approve this?
Motion to approve?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Okay. So that item is done. All right, we'll then move on to performance reporting aquifer levels. Brandy?
I don't know why you got the bad chair, sorry.
That's okay.
Really well.
Everybody? All right, performance reporting. So we have quite a bit in the packet here for you this month. Starting with fiscal year ending in June, the 22-23 final numbers. As you can see for electric, we ended up the year at a 12% total unidentified system losses, which has been what we've been seeing over the past few years roundabout. Similarly for propane, we ended up at a
Before we move on to
Mhm.
propane, but the other thing about electric, that's a remarkable total sales.
It is a remarkable total sales.
I mean, that's a great number. If only our cost of sales had not been what it was,
Right.
we'd be
Very
be-
reflective of a very
we'd
good
be
year
cheering
for the
more than we
resort.
are.
Yes.
The 6.5 was kind of going over 6.5 was the dream. All right, thanks. I just wanted to interject that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Was there anything else on electric?
Yes.
Mhm.
So this typically we get that earlier in the year, so I'm not sure why it was delayed this year, but I think it'd be useful when, at least when we do the full year, like we have now, to actually have a peek at how we perform in previous years, so we can see trends of consumption for both propane, electricity, or even water and oils. So I think that'd be useful I know month to month it may be a bit too much trouble, but certainly when we have a full year like that, it'd be useful to have a table to see our consumption year over year, or at least the last 5 years, I would say. Yeah.
We have charts for that. It's just they weren't included.
They weren't included. I monitor it pretty closely for wastewater just
Yeah.
to see for I&I purposes, but it's data that we have available.
So actually, I tried to retrieve last year from my packet, and it also, so I had to go every month until I can find it in July. But actually, I didn't have the packet on my computer, and I tried to go online, and same thing, it was not there. I mean, the link was dangling. So I think most of our links to access old packet are dangling. We get an error 404, so it's not very useful. And well, anyway, so I think if you do the table, I don't need to dig further, but I think the link we have on the website should be checked at some point because most of them are dangling now.
Yeah, we switched to online cloud storage of all our files. So all the prior links are all dead. That's on our list to do, but it's a very low priority.
So I said my time. So when was how many months ago?
Month and a half.
Within the last
Oh,
two.
that's it. No, because I wasn't able to go deeper. I think I would say about the first 5-6 months seems to be we access, but then, yeah.
And so there's an update going on between the server and the server. And it's, unless
Okay.
we're pulling a particular file, it's pulling them very slowly.
Okay.
So
I actually telling me error 404, which is, I mean, maybe look, our IT guy could look into that too. I think either we remove the links or
yeah,
we.
no,
Yeah.
it's a known issue. It's just
Yeah,
a very low
yeah,
priority.
yeah. So that was for that. As far as losses, I think we really need to do. I know we have a goal of 12%. That's kind of an arbitrary decision that we have, and it's on the top of that we have the known losses. So I think we need to make progress on that. So actually, I don't like us to have such a goal of 12%. That seems to be it's almost. If I can't compute all these things together, so I'm talking probably to almost 18% of losses, or maybe 16, 17. I don't know exactly. I would have to do the math, but this is a lot. So I think we have to do more than just reporting on that. We need to make progress.
Isn't that 12% loss from the substation green to the?
No, actually, that's not included. Actually, the substation
Valley is not.
No, you see, they are here. So they are out. This is the loss for the substation, and this is the unidentified losses.
The unidentified losses do capture the line loss, not the substation transformer loss, because that's.
Well, that's what I meant.
But the line loss is included both
Isn't that
out
pretty
valley
much-
and in valley.
That's been pretty consistent, hasn't it? Or not?
Consistency is hard for the losses. We've seen over the last few years about a 12% unidentified loss since we've been on the out valley line permanently, more or less permanently. But they do fluctuate. And so I hear your concern.
Yeah.
Propane?
Yep.
Propane for year to date, yet another one where we do see fluctuations, but ended up at 1% loss for the year. This is typical for the last few years. Just from reporting on this a lot, we usually fluctuate between plus or minus 3%. So 1% is about average for the year, but I have made a note that multi-year would be good to bring you back a chart for. Right.
Glad we don't have big losses in propane.
If we had big losses in propane, we on the plus side would know about it.
They smell it.
We would be very scared, but we would know about it.
Actually, since the propane study came up and we have this radius of the window blown in case of an explosion. It really put in perspective the hazard.
On water, we have year-to-date totals, and you'll notice here in June that we have a discovered leaks before the meter of 2.8 million. And so this was from that leak on hawkweed. So if we include that as not an unidentified system loss, we're at 14%, but it really was a loss. And if we consider that in our losses, it was 34% total for the year, including that leak. And then lastly, for wastewater, we look and we see unidentified unmetered usage, which is I&I getting into the system. We're at 48%. This is not as bad as it has always been, or has ever been, but it's pretty high, and it indicates a lot of snow melt and water that's just flowing around the valley. I am very happy to report that we've had some issues with grease traps on our system that have chipped manhole rings and that sort of thing. And we actually have progress on that and repairs being made on Monday. And I expect that that will have a visible impact on our I&I.
Yeah, I mean, clearly it's April, May, June, so it must be the snow melt. And I was actually, that's why I wanted to see the previous year as well. I think we did much better last year, but there was not the previous year. It was a fairly small year. Yeah. And we did, observe, I would say, a lot of progress on I&I a number of years ago, but I think we may have to intensify that again, especially if we don't go for that expanded tank for the WWTP, then we need to actually make sure we don't have this kind of I&I situation. We have an El Nino year coming this year, so we may have water over snow. And so I&I could be a big issue here again. So,
all right. If there aren't any other questions on last fiscal year, then we can move on to this fiscal year. Zena. All right. So for this fiscal year, we have the first 2 months of the year. Tommy did get done with the billing process, but I was doing a lot of inspections this week. And I wasn't able to get September here on the chart for you, but we will bring that back next month. So July and August, as you see in July for electric, we have a negative loss. This is unusual, but it's also typical. If it's going to happen, it's this time of year when we're getting reads back from the backside, from snowmaking, from places that have been buried for, part of the winter. So we got July and August, we're sitting right now for electric at a 4% unidentified loss for the year. If we look at propane, we have a 3% unmetered loss for the year. So far, so good. Water. In water, the thing to note here is in August, you'll see something that's noted under discovered leaks before meters of 309,000 gallons. This was actually an overflow of our tank. So a well was left on and unmonitored for long enough that it actually spilled out of the tank. If we look at August, knowing how much that was spilled, we see a 7% unidentified loss. This is also a true loss of water. So the actual loss for August was 39%. Questions on that before we move to wastewater?
Could you just explain maybe in more detail circumstances around what happened and maybe what we've learned from that and why that might not be able to happen again?
Yes, I would be happy to.
Thank you.
So we have one well that is not controlled from the wastewater treatment plant. You actually have to go to the well building and turn it on. Our operators did that. Typically, it is 2 people that do this operation together. So there's a bit of a double check. Unfortunately, we had someone off that day. It was a single operator. thought he turned it off, left for the weekend. 2 days later, we see water that is flowing. So we've looked back at our policies to try to see if we can make sure you've always got a second person if you are running that particular well. That's mostly achievable. There were other circumstances that were causing us to not run other wells at the time. So it was really the only one we had to produce. But we've also asked our electrician to look into a timer. Just you go in, you flip the switch, it runs for a maximum of 5 hours, it turns itself off. So that is something that we're going to install so that this sort of thing doesn't happen, because we don't want this to happen. And I know you guys don't either. So
Thank you for taking action.
all right, last one, wastewater. So you can see July and August, we're still seeing some I&I in the system. It is slowed down, but there are still creeks running out there. We still got water. We're sitting at 52% I&I for the year. And I would be happy to answer any questions on that.
Any questions for Ben? No? Okay.
That's all I have.
Okay. You want to do the shed status? There?
Yes, I would love to.
Or would you rather not?
No, I mean, we're making progress.
Good.
I'm actually very happy that we're making progress. So if we look at residential here, you'll see a couple of outstanding from June and August. Those are sheds that have been constructed, but are waiting for louvers. So the final vent that needs to go in so that we can check these off is still outstanding. We are not making moves to turn these people off. It is protected. It is just, we have got to get these louvers. There's been some back orders on louvers. People are working on these. John's monitoring these to try to get those buttoned up. There's also, so we have right now 38 outstanding, including those 5 from earlier in the year. John told me before he left for the weekend that there are 10 in progress right now that he's done at least one inspection on. So we're making progress. We're gonna be down to the wire, but people are trying to comply and we are trying to help them as much as possible. So that's residential. For commercial, we have 2 outstanding for November and 1 for December. Of those, 2 are almost complete. The other one is, John feels that it will be complete. They have a plan. They are not in construction yet for the December one, but he anticipates they will be. So this is a lot of progress. This has been a lot of staff time and working with the community, but we are making good progress and we'll keep reporting on it until we get them all off the list.
Just remind me, I apologize, it's probably been said before, but is this now the complete, are these tables complete so that there will be no new rows added to future months of like January 25 is I think the last row I see in it residential, and April 24, are these the last rows of data?
Yes.
So whatever's here we're seeing now is the last set of meters.
Exactly. So so the things that will come up are people who maybe are still on the list but sell. Those people, we have a process now for contacting the new owners as soon as possible, saying
Yes.
this is the condition that this is in. So we should not be going out past January of 25.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Oh, sure.
All right. So propane storage pre-design discussion.
Yeah, so this is the pre-designed storage that was directed by the board and the ops committee. Over time, we just went to pre-design instead of a full design. And so the report's included in there, which basically both operations committee and staff don't believe addition of a tank would be prudent, and we should consider proceeding with a vaporizer building and tank roof as the only component of the project.
Okay, are there any questions about the report or the recommendations? You want to comment from Ops?
It just seemed like the most pragmatic way to go, given everything that's on our plate right now and the future of propane, not to overinvest in it.
Yeah, I read the study and appreciate the work here. My general sentiment on the propane stuff is that I want to keep it running so that we can have it operational. $1 million to me for the building is $1 million of money I would love to see us spending on getting people onto electric and things like that off of propane. So I'm just trying to think about, I don't know, how does that balance out in the long run? And how do we make that decision, I guess, is it's hard for me right now and without having more discussion and more understanding other than just reading the report. But I guess that's my general prerogative is like, money invested in here. I would like, for the tank, I would rather spend any money for a new tank going towards electrification and things like that. And so I'm just trying to think about what this looks like, and I imagine this will be paid, and like what's
It's more like a safety issue, is how I view it.
And just to be clear, propane rates would pay for this, so you can't use propane rates to pay for electrification.
Understood.
So just make sure we don't blur those lines.
Understood.
And this is purely basically a safety and operational issue.
I understand.
Just to have avoided the problem we had with the base pressure this past season.
It wouldn't hurt. I'm not sure, because once we got to the valves, we were not able to determine why they had closed. But getting to the valves at that time was literally tunneling in from the road underneath 15 feet of snow. So had that snow not been there and we been able to walk underneath that, would we have been able to prevent that from happening, or did the snow contribute? I can't say.
So one other question, then we'll, Howard. These are independent projects, right? There's between
Yeah,
the,
we can do the vapor. Yeah, I mean, there's some economy of scale to do them at the same
Right.
time from the manufactured building provider. So it would be more costly to break them apart, but
oh, I
it could
see.
be, but it could be
That's the linkage, is the material would be the same supplier.
right, exactly.
And would this
Okay,
be built to the standard sizing of our current structure, or then not
It would
to
be
the
built to
company
the sizing of our current property.
properties, which would then mean if the future, for whatever reason, we decided to add another tank, it would fit under this structure or no?
That's one possible, or it would also provide another place to store stuff protected from snow, which is probably the more likely
Gotcha.
use of it. To
Right, okay,
be honest,
gotcha, right, yeah, right.
it's much more pragmatic to do that, because it would be a good area for storage. Right now, we're letting Vail use about 20 feet of our property all the way around that boundary. So
Understood.
okay, Howard, do you have a question, please?
Yeah, so what you're saying is that in addition to improving safety, there would be some operational cost savings associated with this? It would be easier?
Absolutely easier to get in, to read the tank levels, to adjust valves if needed. It would make a huge impact operationally over there, because right now the whole place gets buried. You can literally walk on the snowbank above the top of the tanks. So if you got to get underneath the tanks to do something, that's a huge undertaking.
I mean, it took us 2 days to dig down to get underneath last time, and that was 3 people digging.
Four people and a backhoe. I mean, it was a whole project. So, yes, I mean, the heartburn over the cost is certainly valid, but from an operational standpoint, it would help a lot.
Bertrand, you had a,
Yeah, so I see three things in this issue here, topic. The vaporizer, the expansion of tank, and I think I hear a consensus that it's not something we are going to do. I mean, that's my opinion.
that's
That's
the
a staff
staff's,
opinion.
yeah.
I think we are all in page, like I said, so we can put that to rest. And then there's a roof issue. So, honestly, it sounds like a very expensive roof based on structure that you can build. But bottom line is, I think we should go ahead definitively support going ahead for the vaporizer. I'm not convinced you need to spend $750,000 for a roof over the tank. If you have access issue, maybe something needs to be worked to minimize the issue. So if it's just to read things, we could have a camera installed so you can remotely read what you need to read. I mean, there are other solutions we could look into instead of spending $750,000 to put on the top of the propane. Cannot be a building because you want the explosion to be able to not take more stuff with it. So I'm not convinced at all that after 40 or 50 years that these tanks are here, that for the safety of the tank itself, that it is needed to have a roof. Now, for operation, I understand you're totally your concern, but are there other options that we could look into to preserve the access? And actually, if we build a little thing to go where you need to go, it would cost much less than $750,000.
The only thing I would say to that is all it's going to take is one snow tunnel collapsing and one person dying, and this place will be bankrupted. $1 million is well spent for my employees' safety. And they're digging tunnels under 15 feet of snow. I get real nervous.
So,
I say we've done that for 50 years, so.
And we had a house that hadn't blown up for 40 and it did.
yeah, so I would think what we'd like to do is go ahead and just start to do the economic analysis. What would we do for rates, et cetera, assuming that we would do either just the vaporizer or both, to look at both, and then so we have a sense of what it would mean to the utility
Whichever way we
customers.
proceed, we would put this into the master plan for them to
Yeah.
add that, which would then go into the rate study.
Right. Howard, another question?
Yeah. So if you put a roof over the vaporizer, does that take care of all the valves and everything you need to get to? Or is there's still other stuff you need to get to?
There's two sets of equipment. So underneath the two bulk propane tanks, there's a series of pipes and valves underneath that we need to get to, which right now just gets buried. And then separately over at the vaporizers, there's a series of pipes and valves that we need to get to. That's a smaller footprint over there. But there's two separate areas.
And could the valves that are inaccessible, could they be automated so that they could be remotely operated?
I don't believe so, because every automated system that I know of, and it's something we could check into, every automated system that I know of would require the valve stem to actually move, and it's external. And these are solidly encased pipes and valves underneath there. So in order to operate them now, we've got to dig in, and then we've got someone with a shovel chipping away the ice and snow around the valve. So my thought is I don't know, but I'm not 100% on that.
So do you want a motion on this, or you had just verbal direction?
I don't, at the board's discretion, but if we say we want to include it in the master plan, then that's easy enough. And then we still have a chance whether we include it or not at the ultimate rate study.
Yeah. I think that's the consensus, is we want to see what this would.
I mean, I would just say that, given that we just had a conversation about meter sheds for our commercial and residential customers, this seems like we should have our own application of our own standards to our own equipment. So I appreciate the safety concerns and the operational concerns very much. I just, I'm just want to be conscious of how we're spending our customers' money. So I do support us moving forward, but I think we should abide by what we've required of our customers for ourselves.
Okay, any other comments?
Just for clarification, those tanks haven't been in that location for 50 years. They've been moved several times.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they used to be right in front of the old Kirkwood vehicle shop, and we have to have people leave a few times because of problems with those tanks. Used to be right where the fuel island for Vale is right now. Just for clarification, just
Yeah, no, it's,
Interesting.
yeah,
So the tanks are how old now?
it's in the report,
Yeah.
the actual dates
Fifties
of
and
them.
sixties.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's,
They're the same tanks, they've just.
Yeah, so they just been moved.
Well, I can tell you, older than that, it's just fine.
So I'm totally in favor of the vaporization project. I'm still not convinced about the roof. I think we should actually look at, there are concerns and they should be looked at. And in the design of this thing, it's 180,000. And the master plan is 100,000. So we keep throwing a lot of money here before we make a decision on how should we move. So I would prefer that we actually get more information, and I'm totally in support of the vaporizer building. Before I can approve and vote for the thing, I'd need more information on the roofing.
Okay, so that's the plan to proceed.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, item I, electricity cost of goods sold adjustment.
John, you want to take this one away? Since it was finance, I wanted to bring it back.
What's that?
Do you want to take this one since finance wanted to bring it back to the
Yeah.
board?
Scrolling down to the document,
Me too.
Want to wait?
a lot of propane stuff in
A
here.
lot of propane stuff.
Want to wait?
Thanks.
Page 108.
Yeah, this is revisiting the recommendation to add some sort of mechanism to be able to cover fluctuations in the cost of wholesale electricity. And you can see the impact was pretty clear on what was required from property tax allocations for electric. And the idea is they have it both be adjusted up and down based on the cost of wholesale electric. And similarly to propane, but applied more fairly to the month that the electricity was used. That covered enough, Eric?
Yeah, and that if we did proceed, that we would go through the normal noticing process and public hearing process like we did the initial go round.
Add a couple of things. Sure. Just, I think when we talked about it, it was that we saw this most acutely last year in December, but it has not been the only month in which we've been losing money on the kilowatt hours we're selling. Because I think we've had 2 months in the past. Is that two recent months that are also been more expensive in terms of what we're paying for it than what we're charging our customers. So it's not just a one-time issue. It seems like historically this hasn't been an issue. The other thing I'll just add is that, this is a mechanism. There are other ways that we can think about this. And we talked about this at the last time we talked about it at the board, was we could just increase from 22 cents to 30 cents a kilowatt hour. There are lots of ways. And so I want to make sure that we're not, when we're thinking about this and going forward with this, that we don't be exclusive necessarily to just this mechanism. There are other ways that we could do this. I'm sure some of the fixed charges could get included into the base rate differently than we have. There are other ways to fund this. I think at the end of the day, I support we have to do something about this. And I think we need to get the community's feedback on options. I think there are other things that we can do in terms of offering multiple types of rates. I mean, depending on how far we want to go on this. My biggest concern with the dynamic pricing like this is that we don't have a mechanism to alert our customers right now in terms of the swings of price. And so they can be billed well after the instance of using the electricity for prices that they didn't have a chance to respond to. And I think that's one of the things that we'll have to explore as we go through this process. But I think the crux of the issue is that we need to do something because we're selling our electricity at a loss right now.
Yeah, there's another item in here too. There's a request to get hedge pricing as an alternative,
Right.
And we've been unable to get Shell to respond to that. That was done previously, and I think logic would apply that it'll be a lot more expensive to do hedge versus day ahead. So we could continue to stall this process, trying to get hedge pricing, but it hasn't been forthcoming so far. So we'd like to move forward because I think we know the hedge pricing is going to be expensive anyway. It's not going to be an attractive alternative.
And I think the only other open question is how narrowly or broadly do we discuss this right now? Because I think the next rate study was 2025. And so do we want to try to keep this narrowly to any adjustments just for this part of it? I know there are things on our the calendar here for the next rate study on the page 110. Are we going to try to keep this conversation very narrow, broad? I mean, that's kind of conversation thing that we'll have to think about as well as we go through this. So what do we want to do now versus in 2025, or how does that work?
Any other board comments? I'll go to the audience.
Yeah, I'm just going so like Doug said, so there is an issue, but there are several ways to approach it. My big concern is shifting from a static pricing system that we actually discussed at length through the last study, electrical rate study, to a dynamic one. Add a lot of complexity to it, fairness, because you have to the people. For the people, it's going to create problem. And to me, we are shifted. It's almost a bait and switch that we are doing here. So I'm very uncomfortable. I do think we need to address the issue. And I'm looking at historically, but when we were actually buying edge supply, it was a 1-2 cents above the market pricing. So it gives us a range that would be sufficient to actually allow us to hedge ourselves. And so I would be much more comfortable by adding 2 cents to the cost, steady everyone using it. And because people have their own lives, their rent, their lease, and that's not the same person that's going to pay. So there's all kind of issues that are coming up. And to me, this is deceiving people because we said it would be a static system. And now we are saying, oh, by the way, it's going to be dynamically changed. And I think that's really not appropriate, at least without another rate study. But so that's my position is I'm support to add 1-2 cents. Basically, we can do some calculation here to find what the right value to the actual rate. And that would basically remove the concern that we had last year, which was a special year. I mean, the water reserve were low, the natural gas was very high. I mean, there was a lot of confluent situation here. So that's my position. I could go more, but in a nutshell, this is what I think.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that it's like we would be going basically from a flat rate to real-time pricing, light, if you will. And I think most utilities who offer some level of dynamic pricing, they offer multiple tariffs where people can choose, like just like we are choosing, do we want to go on the day ahead or do we want to hedge? Our customers could go for real-time pricing or a tariff that is more applicable to that, or they could hedge and they can have. So there are lots of ways that we could do this. At the end of the day, I understand staff time is not able to be the same number of tariffs as other utilities, and that we have to make that decision and how we can functionally do these sorts of things. But we have to address the problem, and I think we just need to move forward and have a conversation about how to best address it.
Okay, Howie?
Yeah, so as a member of the finance committee, I heard again that we can't have a different rate per kilowatt hour for the consumers or different rate structure for commercial. And so if I might, I just want to pass this out. This is the actual agreement where the PUD purchased the gas and electric facilities. And I just included the cover sheet and the table of contents, but you can see this was a very long agreement. So I didn't want to print the whole thing out, but I just printed out the relevant page 34. And you can see I highlighted there where it says that, first of all, it says that without a written approval by the resort, which means that this could be changed. And the other thing is it said per kilowatt. It doesn't say anything about price per kilowatt hour. That might have been an oversight. It might have been a typo, but this is the written signed agreement. And we need to change our entire rate structure so it's based more on demand. The current rates are extremely unfair to the full-time residents. I've brought this up before. In June of 2022, I wanted to make a presentation. I was not allowed to talk more than about 1 minute. There's a real need to revisit the entire rate structure. And so I strenuously object to any change whatsoever without reopening the whole rate structure and do it properly, hire a consultant, do the right thing.
Okay, thank you. All right, so there's a proposal to just move forward with. I don't have the line in front of me now. So do either of you want to make a motion?
Yeah. Motion to make this adjustment.
Motion to research the agenda.
Right.
I want to clarify.
Sure.
I would second the motion to research the options for making adjustments to address our challenges.
So you're
Okay.
basically deferring on it.
Not deferring it, but we have to go through our process that we would go through for any rate study, right? That's the 60-day notice and all the sorts of things. We need to do the work to figure out what the options are and give those back to the community.
So you want to make the decision now, but you don't want to do more investigation first? So what you're saying? I'm trying to understand.
No,
No, we're just agreeing to start the process.
Start the
Oh, you're
process.
just agreeing to start
Start the
investigating.
process.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I need to clarify.
Yeah, this is
I
just
was
like
just
start the
confused,
process
okay.
and make sure that we can do something to make sure that we're not selling electricity at a loss.
So we'll have time to review these documents and others and.
Yeah.
We're just committing to looking into it. Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, without preconceived idea how to address the issue.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded. Any other discussion?
I second.
You'd be third. But that's okay.
Yeah?
Wait,
Well, you're
you'd be
third.
the third, but
You're the third.
Oh, I'm sorry.
that's fine.
I'm
Okay.
sorry.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. All right, good. Any update on Rick? Should we take a break or what do we think?
I texted him, obviously he's busy. I'm comfortable proceeding on 9D without him.
Okay,
And alternatively, we could go into closed session as well. We do have that item.
and then come back.
Just try and then hold 9C, I think,
All right,
as long as we can.
That seems good.
let's do 90 and hopefully he'll be back.
9
What page?
D.
What
Okay.
page are we on?
Something. We're above all the propane stuff, so.
Okay, page 30, nope, 50, 55, 56.
9
So as you all know, basically that we kind of put a hiatus on doing anything further in terms of fire while the TAC works through the various components of it. However, we've kind of hit an important letter of resignation that was withdrawn, thankfully. That kind of highlighted some our exposure we have. So in order to hire professionals, there's two ways the district can do it. One, the district could employ the chief and firefighters directly. We would have to add a new contract with CalPERS for local safety member contract. This was looked at in 2015 and was rejected by the board due to significant costs associated with it. But that would be one way to do it. Chief Ansel and myself met with both the current and the prior chief at AFPD. They don't use this model because they can't get firefighters competing in CalPERS. They're competing against Sacramento and San Bruno and, Alameda, who pay significantly more than us with better benefits, better amenities, better equipment. And us going into CalPERS, they said we would probably never be able to get anyone. That was their candid assessment. The other option is to do something similar to what a lot of small counties and small fire districts do, is they basically create a wholly owned subsidiary board, which is the same board. You would just have a different title and a different meeting, and they would run you would run under a different hat, the fire department, and we wouldn't have to be in PERS if we did that. We could be on a 457 plan or a 401k plan, or some other sort of defined pension plan if that's what the board wanted. And this is, like I said, this is how the others operate. I see Rick coming back now. So,
Okay.
So recommendation is direction from the board, which if we decide to do either of these, it's going to take staff time and cost money to do. But since we kind of put a hiatus on spending money, I don't want to do this till the board tells me, yes, look at this option or this option. It's pretty clear in Rick and my mind that going through the LAFCO process, creating the KVFD board is it will benefit Kirkwood more than the first option. So that is our recommendation, but we need board direction if we should spend any more time on this, and to start that process. Because if we do ever decide we want paid firefighters, one of these two will have to be in place.
I just want to add a little onto that. I also attended the meetings with Withrow. And I just think it's important. Right now, we're in a very unique situation that we have, our assistant general manager also is a fire chief. When he retires, we can't repeat. I can't imagine how we'd repeat that situation. So if we think we'll ever need to have somebody who's an employee, we really need a structure that would attract people. And also this structure would allow someone who's retired to come back and do things, which is what the other thing the chief said is we might end up finding somebody in that category. So unless we're sure we would never want an employee, I think putting this in motion so we know how to do it, how long it would take and what it would cost would inform the TAC and would not be lost money if we think we would ever have at least one employee. Yeah.
So there may be a third avenue, actually. Remember that we had actually discussion with the Eastern Alpine Fire, that's what it's called. Check.
Yeah, well,
Eastern Alpine Fire, yes.
Mhm.
And I remember I was on the board and we had this discussion with the fire chief over there at the time. And we were thinking if we could merge.
Yeah.
I know there was a meeting later between Eric Rickard and someone else, I'm not sure who, and them. And then they sent us a proposal that we at the time deemed unattractive. However, I believe they already have fire employees at this fire thing. And if he come, we can double check. I think that's from him that I'm getting that information.
They have one paid fire chief.
Yeah. So that means they already have the structure. And so maybe it's the time also to look into discussing with them again and see if we could have some organization or arrangement with them to be able to get a fire employee.
Yeah, I guess we left off of it. We did that.
Yeah.
We talked to every available one in the area.
Yeah.
And no one is interested.
What do you mean?
No one was interested in trying to do a combination. But we did check this summer with all of them.
That's not what I recall, actually. So
No, these are conversations we had in the summer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So as I said, things have changed. We have a more present need, like you said, to have a structure in place for when Rick is retiring. And I think that should be something we need to look at. I think there is 3 solutions.
I said we had the conversations in August, July. I mean, we had conversations very recently with them, and there was no interest.
I find it interesting that being on the board, I don't have this kind of information. I think there is a lack of follow-up with your fellow board member.
These were conversations between Chief Ansel and Sheriff Minder. Bob was not involved.
No,
You can apologize to him now for falsely accusing him. That'd be nice. He had nothing to do with that.
No, actually,
Chief Ansel spoke with Sheriff Minder, who is now running Eastern Alpine. It's not a separate entity anymore. It's now under the Sheriff's Department. Sheriff Minder had no interest. And Rick relayed that information, not Bob talking to
Actually, I
someone.
was not specifically speaking at Bob here. Actually, Eric,
Go back and listen
let
to
me
the audio,
finish.
'cause you
Let
were.
me finish.
No, you should go listen to the audio because you were attacking him. And I'm tired of you attacking him
Listen,
and other board members.
You don't tell me what to do.
You're
okay?
right, and you don't tell me what to
Yeah.
do.
So actually, you have the thing reversed. The board is here to actually oversee the general manager. This is what we do.
Yeah, the board.
Yeah.
Not just you.
Indeed. Otherwise, things would be different.
I'm sure they would. I'm glad to know that.
Okay, you stop it now,
Or
so I
what?
can express myself.
Will you be polite to him?
Let me finish.
If you be
Mind
polite to
your
him, I will
business.
shut
Mind
up
your
if you'll be
business.
polite.
Mind your business. You are
How
not
you
here to
treat my
educate
board
me.
is my business.
Yeah.
How you treat my board is my business.
Okay, let me finish. So Eric Richard had this meeting, Richard, with the people from Eastern Alpine Fire, and that was it. He never came back to the board, and I learned this thing from himself at the thing. I just find it totally discourteous when there are information of importance like that they are not shared with all board members. And actually, Bob is doing the same thing on a number of things. For example, let's talk about one.
Is this on the agenda?
Can we keep to the agenda topic, please? The agenda topic
Yes.
is whether we want staff to evaluate what it would cost to create a structure. They haven't
Okay,
played.
I can discuss that during the discussion.
Okay.
I actually feel like we've got a technical advisory committee that's supposed to be taking on the next phase of how do we fund a fire department, staff it and organize it. I'd like to see that process continue. Right, and so I don't know that we need to add another process to that. As we're saying, we're gonna enable a future decision that might come, right? That's what we're saying. We figure out how to have a full-time employee in the valley here, and we haven't decided what we're doing in the valley here, right? So I'd rather just defer and say, let the advisory committee run its play. And when we get down closer to a recommendation with regards to how to organize, how to staff, and things like that, then we can approach this.
Having read the report you put together, I think a small amount of investment would inform them in terms of what it would look like if we're going to have an employee at all. This is what
So
provides.
I modify what I'd say. I think if the TAC says, hey, this is a piece of data we need to be able to move forward, that would be more coordinated, I think. You know what I mean?
Understood. And I think I would defer to Chief Ansel on some of that, if whether this is required, because part of the discussion for the TAC report is how do we offer the feedback that am I allowed to talk about that in this conversation? Is that relevant, or do we have to wait until that happens in the agenda?
Seems they're both pretty related.
I think it's related.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay. In that the part of the conversation there is that as a community, we were talking about how to move forward and get insight from the community, our larger community, on what to move forward with, and that offering hypotheticals on, some of the things we initially talked about wasn't the best way of doing it. It would be offering kind of packages and saying, we could have this package, this level of service, this level of cost, this amount of cost, and we try to come up with feasible 5, 6, 4, 3 packages that we will have a subset of the committee working on. I think this would help to know, but I don't know for sure.
This would help if you thought any of those packages would have at least one employee.
And so in that regard, so I would think that this would help inform how we would be able to structure a feasible package in that regard.
That's why we put it on the agenda.
So that's the prerogative that I'm coming for. I will defer to Chief Ansel on confirming this, but I think the logic of what we just talked about would be that, assuming that the conversation on the TAC went in the way that the recommendations that I've put through in there were followed, that we would want information about how to do this.
So probably we would just coordinate this better is if it was coordinated with the TAC, right? Like if this would have come forward as staff and the TAC recommend this is a piece of data we need to move forward. And it's kind of a no-brainer, right?
And I would
So
imagine,
I think
That's a
what
good point.
we're looking for
Yeah,
is just to
that's-
have it more
so-
integrated.
I guess what I would say is, I agree. And so what I would imagine to follow what you're saying, to follow that, what would happen is we would defer on this for some amount of time. And then we can have the conversation about the TAC. And the board said, look, this is what the recommendations about the TAC report are correct. I will then ask members of that committee to then go think about packages. They will say, I imagine one of the packages will include a full-time employee. We should figure out what that could look like and what the feasibility and cost of that would be. And then at the next board meeting, we would say, here,
We want to do that.
we want to do what's on agenda item 9D.
Yeah.
To help us move forward with offering packages and getting that information. That would be to follow, I think, linearly what you're suggesting.
Given the state of the fire department, I'm just anxious to be able to make progress. Although not too anxious. And this is something we'll need. So I thought getting it done in parallel might be a good idea, but if we want to slow it down and decide to do what we need later, I don't care.
I think with looking at the two options, it's pretty obvious which one would apply to us, so.
Right.
You're just looking for confirmation that it's.
We
I think you
agreed
could-
that we weren't going to spend any dollars on this.
Right.
This would be a small expenditure and we didn't want to proceed.
Small expenditure of staff time.
And a little bit of,
Immediate council.
we need a little bit of council time because LAPCO would need to approve the structure and we just
Sure.
need to know exactly what it would look like.
Do you think that there any legal jeopardy by having everybody else on our staff has got CalPERS and?
This would be,
Can we
that's
keep
why
that
you need,
separate?
that's why you need a separate entity.
Yeah.
Yeah, that they would be employees of a different entity. They would not be
Okay.
KMPUD employees.
And you don't think that this could be challenged?
No,
In
it's
fact,
done
this is
everywhere
the
in
same.
California.
okay.
This is pretty
All right.
common in small
Just ask.
counties. Yeah, small counties, small districts, they do this a lot.
I mean, it seems to make obvious sense
Yeah.
that it meets our needs better than the first option.
Yeah, since we already at the board, the previous board, look into the other options, I would focus on the second option first and see if there is an avenue there. And maybe we can dig a bit more why the previous KMPUD board rejected that. If we can find some information related to that, that'd be useful.
Rick said it was because of the money.
Yeah, but magnitude, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll defer to the TAC committee. Would you like to move in second that we,
Yeah, I would move in second that we move forward with this then.
you can only do one of the two.
Sorry. You gave me the options. You didn't make it sound like I had
I
a choice.
hate putting my foot down, but I'm afraid you've crossed my line.
It didn't make it sound like I could though. No, I was gonna say move to do the second is what I was trying to say. Do the second.
Oh, I
Not
got
move
it. I'm
second.
sorry.
I was trying to move to do the second.
I
To
misunderstood.
explore,
explore-
yeah, I
explore
support that too.
Okay, do you second?
To the minimum level we have.
Yes,
Yeah, I
the
can
minimum
second.
level of expenditure, staff time.
I think
would
it is
like to
useful
say that.
information.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is Sarah, all right,
As there, I could get a CalPERS contract proposal if you want that. That doesn't cost anything to set for staff time. I could do both. Just I want direction if, I think it's a waste of time, but I will do it, but I'm just saying we can.
I
if we're
don't see
already
much
doing
of a
it.
use of that
Yeah.
at this point.
Okay,
I
so
would say
we will
stay
start
with
talking to
original.
Josh and get him to
okay.
tell us
So-
what we have to do.
The second option looks more appropriate for the size of our
Yeah, it is.
district. Yeah.
So it's been moved and seconded. All in favor? Say
Aye.
aye. Okay. All right,
Hold on, I think he's out of his gear. Give me a second. He's texting me now, which means he's
okay.
skip to major projects real quick, because that doesn't take long.
Yeah, let's do that. Okay, so item 10,
Backwards, sorry.
on page 110.
Thank you. I knew it was at the end. So the only major change in here is Due to the wastewater RFP not being put out, we're going to delay it because the consultant will need access to all of our facilities, which will be under snow soon. And that would be for manholes. And so they could do smoke testing, cameraing, et cetera. We don't want to be doing that in the winter. So that has been deferred and the water master plan was moved forward. They just basically flip-flopped. So that was the big change. We might finish OGALS this quarter. So I still have it on for cleanup, but we might finish it this quarter. So
Pads look good.
yeah, the pads
Looked
look
at it
good. They
this
stripped the
morning.
forms, I think, yesterday or
Yeah, they
today.
look good.
We might as well just come up here. And so yeah, so that's where that sits. Obviously I'll reorder the tank and roof and all that. We'll pull those out and push those into the master plan so we can decide on it at the later capital. So those lines will disappear. Other than that, those are the changes and those are the changes I will make. Any questions on major projects?
I don't hear any. Okay, quickly rearrange things, so.
Oh, good.
So our next item will be 9C, the temporary advisory committee draft plan.
Yeah, thank you. So I just hope everyone had a chance to read the document in the packet, so I won't go through it in great detail other than going to the recommendations. But I do want to provide a bit of a summary and just thank all the community members in the Rick and Bertrand for working together on this committee. I think we had great email and verbal conversations. I'm really happy with the team that we pulled together with a great set of opinions, diverse backgrounds and opinions on things. So I'm really excited about the work that we can do together to try to move forward on fire and emergency medical services, and thank everyone for their time given already and time that they will give, because I think what was really exciting and to me coming out of the conversation as we were thinking about it, and this is partly based off of the guidance that we got earlier in the year, was try to get information as a survey, and that was kind of our starting point. But after talking about it, I think we had a really good conversation, came to consensus that really we want to start with a community coming together and using that as an opportunity to get information out about these services, because I think people might still not be as informed as we would like them to be on this conversation. And so as an opportunity to get people all together with Vail support and Vail involvement and everyone from on all sides of the issue coming together to try to leverage maybe something at the end of the calendar year when there are a lot of owners and residents around, to be able to have some sort of community event around the state of fire and emergency medical services, which we've already drafted a good bit of information around, but have people to ask questions and give their feedback. And from there, we can build a survey to come and leverage off of that community conversation. And what that survey would probably look like is actually be relatively small in some ways. As I said in the earlier conversation, our thought was, as we talked about how a survey could look, there was some conversation about what it could look like. And I think what we came to consensus on is that what's easiest for our community to really make decisions on is a set of feasible packages. I think initially when we talked about the TAC, it was kind of like, what does the community want, and what were they willing to pay for? And I think after our conversation, we kind of coalesced around the idea that having some feasible options with what that could look like, what that could cost, and people can make more informed decisions. And as a secondary question, not secondary to it, but like as the second question, how do we pay for it? How do we allocate those costs? What mechanisms can we use? And we can provide some options. And the idea here is that what we'd like guidance from the board on here is the recommendations in 1, 2, 3, and 4 here, which are coming back to having agreement and direction from the board that we work with the staff to organize a community event towards the end of the calendar year to try to educate the community, get people excited, get in the information, and just try to honestly build community, get people back in the same room together to have a nice positive event around this topic and get everyone on the same page in terms of where our needs are, what our options could potentially be, and to give their feedback and for us to listen. Also, we want to draft in terms of the survey bullets, or points 2 and 3 in here are talking about how the survey might look. So getting agreement from the board that what we would be doing is more of potentially looking at the structure and the organization of what the fire department could look like. And I think that's slightly different than the original guidance that we were given, but that's what I wanted to make sure that we had approval from the board to make movement in that direction. And also as a secondary is that we would have funding mechanisms to be a part of that as well. And then our plan would be then to send a survey in early 2024 after this community event at the end of 2023 timeline. And again, just thank the community for the members that have been involved in the community and hope that we can have a really positive community experience around this. Did I miss anything, Bertrand?
No, we've covered it quite well. Thank you.
Yeah, just to explain how quandary was, it is a complex subject, and most people are not privy and understand all the ramifications. So, and when we are trying to design the survey, it was getting in the weeds, and we didn't think people would be able to understand the complexity. And if we are making it but basically we thought we had to educate a bit before we do the survey, and that's why we opted on that strategy.
So yeah, as Bertrand and Doug mentioned, working through the survey, which I thought had really, it's good bones. There's good things there that we'll certainly use, but the education part I thought was very important, and to include others like Vail Resorts, the John Ryder with KPS and Kirkwood Development, others that we could solicit their ideas and suggestions on how to really talk to the community about what the state of the nation of the fire department is, maybe answer some questions about Measure E that are still kind of flying around out there, but have a workshop and or a community meeting where we can really understand where the next steps might be and then give the possible solution. So I think it's the right direction for now. Though I originally liked to get that survey out really quickly so we could get the feedback from Measure E, but now that the dust has settled a little bit, I think this is a better direction for all of us. So
I agree. I'm looking for direction here. I don't know if it's a motion or just verbal, but consensus would be let's move forward with these 4 recommendations. That's what I'm requesting.
I think you have consensus unless somebody wants to dispute it.
I'm fine with it.
I think we asked the two of you work with Rick and come up with the strategy, and you've come. So I think you've done a very good job.
Thank you.
Yeah, but one of the concerns was if we keep sending survey too often, we are going to get diminished return from this survey. So if we send one and then we discover package and stuff like that, another one. So I think this strategy is makes sense.
Just in terms of logistics too, there will be communications that go out around this. So, we'll work with staff on getting those organized, because I would like to start, thinking about advertising, because part of the subcommittee here will be marketing and event planning and things like that. And so we're going to leverage all 10 people on this committee to move forward and look forward to the community being involved. So like I said,
I think letting people know what's coming would be really good.
So the plan would be to get communications out sooner than later. Details to be determined, but we will communicate sooner than later so that people can get excited about this and we make this a really great event. So thank you for everyone involved.
Okay.
Yeah, and thanks, Doug. You put a ton of hours behind the scenes working with me, but also drafting up these all the different comments from the 7 different committee members. So again, thanks for all the hard work. Really appreciate it.
Okay. Good. Then I think our next item is the general manager's report.
I'm just making sure we got everything.
Yeah, I was just double checking.
Just over the last month, attended CMUA regulatory meeting and the CMUA legislative work group, and then the Aqua Region 3 meeting. I met along with Bob with the HOA Presidents Group, Thimblewood HOA. Brandy and I met with Tesla on their supercharger plan, which seems to be changing, but it's still moving forward. We kicked off. There's new state legislation coming down. New state rulemaking coming down on cross connection control programs. So we're going to have to implement that and have a program developed by a consultant and implemented across the valley, which will be pretty substantive. Water department has been involved in helping us a lot with that. We started off the sanitary sewer mitigation program update, which we have to do every couple of years. We have a consultant that does all our groundwater monitoring for wastewater doing that. And then we attended the wastewater treatment plant scheduling meeting. Their intent is to start, right now they're doing requests for information and submittals, some potholing and site visits, but with the bulk of their work starting after January 1st. That's it.
Any questions? Eric, you have a question?
Yeah, you mentioned something about Tesla. Could you tell us a little bit about what's going on?
Their plans are changing. So the last I heard, they wanted superchargers at Kirkwood Inn. Then they are talking now about only type 2s at Bay of Pigs parking lot.
So no supercharger.
The plans are changing.
Yeah.
So
What's the Bay of Pigs?
Red Cliffs.
The big,
Right across from the KCA
yes,
parking lot.
that big parking.
Heard that.
That's an old name I learned from Dave Waddle, because that's where all the fights used to happen after they left the Busted Beaver bar. That's what I learned. So you blame Dave Waddle.
New for me.
He's been here almost as long as Peter, so.
Employees were required to park on their vehicles on that very top. You know, at one point it was all tiers, and then they
Yeah.
made a big hole there. Yeah, we're leaving the battered beaver, which, you know, I used to be what the 7800 Club was
It
called,
was the battered beaver.
because it was part of the divorce settlement.
Wow.
Oh,
I
geez.
could,
All right,
I can elaborate.
I'm gonna stop it right now. Anyway, Howard, what you started is moving. They're interested, they wanted information about what would the line look like to be on superchargers on 88 and level 2 elsewhere. It's kind of, but we'll see what they finally decide.
Right.
So,
How many was it, Brandy? 22 type 2s?
They were in the 20 to 30 range, but like you said, there weren't any firm plans yet. They were still in discussion.
Yeah.
And usually the level 2s don't include any charge. So, I mean,
I'm just telling you what they said, Howard. I don't know what or why they're doing, but it's a private entity. It's, you know, I'm not gonna meddle in their business.
So what's the current status for charging?
the last time I used it, they worked.
We have four plugins over at
I
the.
don't know.
All I know is they worked the last time I used it.
Sure, that's
the
good.
first time.
4 charge points are okay.
Okay, that's
yeah.
better than it was.
Yeah, and
Don't worry, winter's coming, Peter.
yeah, they're very soon enough, but anyway, it's good. Okay, good. Thanks. So operations report?
Yeah, I'll start with fire first. During operations committee, Peter asked me to kind of give a state of the nation on some of the volunteers and their certification levels. We've been fluctuating between 8 to 12 volunteers during trainings in the last couple months. And I think part of that's because winter's coming, staff is starting to return to the ski resort. And some of the trainings have been really positive. And so I think the word's out there that things are kind of, there's a rebirth in the volunteer side of the fire department, which is very encouraging. But of those 12 volunteers, I'm still the only EMT on board. I have, out of the 12, 3 that are CPR AED certified. And so I've contacted a outside person to come in and teach the CPR class, AED class at the end of this month. And we've got 14 people signed up for that class.
That's good.
Firefighter 1, there are 2 on the department right now, myself and Spencer Patterson, who is one of my captains. Unfortunately, I had 2 of my captains attend 1 month of EMT training at Lake Tahoe Community College, which would have been reimbursed by our tuition program that we have through the 501c3. But unfortunately, due to their work schedule changing at Vail Resort, they were unable to continue the program. So they just dropped this week. So it's disappointing, but they have to pay the bills and they have to keep their jobs. So
Is it because they're working 10-hour days, or?
they've gone back to 8 to 5s.
Oh, that's why.
And so the classes were midweek all day
Right.
long. And
Gotcha.
so they just couldn't do it. And Vail wasn't able to make accommodations for them. So that said, for the month of September, I think we had 9. I'm shooting off the top of my head. 9 total calls. 6 of those calls were nuisance alarms, meaning that contractors working, for example, in Meadowstone, set the alarm off 4 times within 3 days. So we've worked with the property manager who thought they had the contractors under control, the systems on test, prevent nuisance alarms. Clearly it didn't work. So we'll be billing Meadowstone, sorry, Doug, for the nuisance alarms, as well as Timber Ridge for 34 Palisades. Again, contractors working on the building set the alarm off on 3 occasions.
How does that happen? Is smoke, something smokes that they're doing?
The contractor in Meadowstone, for example, was working on the boiler system. They haven't had hot water for a little while. And in the process of sweating pipes and recharging systems, they smoke out the apartment. There's an alarm system that sets off a sensor. So anyway, it's a preventable alarm caused by construction.
Well, the good news is this during daytime.
Yeah. And then finally for fire, we had 1 call in September that no one responded to, and we had 2 weekends. I think it was a total of 9 days that were 0 coverage, except for me responding from Gardnerville. So I'm pleased to announce this month, my on-call schedule actually is full. There's only 1 Sunday that's no one's covering yet at the end of the month. But we are trying desperately to train people to get them able to actually get in a brush truck and drive and respond to a call. And then finally, unfortunately, I'd like to report that there was a fatality last Sunday. And thank God we had 4 KVFD volunteers on scene to deal with that. The scene took about 4 hours to clear.
Is this a vehicle fatality?
It was a vehicle versus a hay truck. So, but we are currently doing critical incident stress debriefings with our team, and everybody seems to be doing okay. But bad things happen in Kirkwood. So,
Yeah.
And that's it for fire, unless there's any questions. Then I'll move on to water, wastewater. I don't know if this was mentioned earlier, but we were in the process, as you know, to replace the membranes in the wastewater treatment plant. The design, unfortunately, was not the exact same model that we got before. The company, Coke Membranes, no longer made that product, so they suggested a different product. Long story short, the product did arrive. We had the crew or the team coming from back east to install, and the manifolds that above the membranes were not designed correctly. So we're in the course right now. Brandy and team are trying to redesign the whole complete header system, which is not an easy fix. It involves welding aluminum pipes, and we're just not going to get these membranes in this winter, maybe next summer. Meanwhile, we've got the membranes sitting in our vehicle maintenance shop. And as I was showing Doug today, we did a tour of the shop looking at normal equipment and talking about district operations. They're in our way. So we're going to have Coke remove the membranes, store them until they can come up with a proper design, and then come back and install them. So we'll report back as we know.
The problem is what Coke delivered doesn't fit, right?
The membranes will fit into the basin.
And not
There's a
the
very
pipe.
small clearance, but the working parts, the piping above the membranes was not designed correctly. They
discontinued the model that we bought.
Yeah.
The new model doesn't fit with the old transverse piping and
Right.
headers.
Right.
Yeah.
And they were supposed to retrofit the newer model to fit with that, which they did not do. They just sent
Right.
the stock new model that does not work.
So the problem is at least their
We believe it's
responsibility.
Coke's problem.
Okay.
Yeah.
But the solution is to modify our equipment.
The solution would be to modify basically all the overhead piping and supports to handle these new ones. It's about $25,000 estimated welding.
Aluminum's
He-
not my special.
He would turn it into a
It-
work of
it's
art.
stainless, which is even worse, as
It's
you well know.
stainless, yeah.
Okay, thanks.
2 more items. One, snow removal. We are looking so good on staffing this year. It's the first time ever Brandy and I were talking, going to a construction site to look at something. And it's like, not only do we have good quality candidates who are returning from, or people that are returning from last year that know the operations and the routes and all the little weird things of a driveway and snow removal. We've got their friends coming now and saying, hey, I want to be on part of your team. So there's 3 different candidates, and all of them sound really good. So moving forward for snow removal, I think in years, this is the best way we've been set up for success. For snow stakings, we didn't have any issues finding materials like metal stakings and plastic like we have in the years past. We've revamped our employee housing to accommodate more employees for overnight stays, so we can keep them in Valley where we need them during storm cycles. And with the new mid-size blower and the old blower, the RPM blower, the big blower or man-eater blower, as I've heard, is out of the shop, but everything's going to be dialed in. We're looking really good. And October 15th is the contract beginning, and we've got about 80% of the contracts back. And so we're looking really good. And any questions about snow removal?
Has he made any progress with the towers, coming to terms with the towers?
We, since the last board meeting, I think contacted them at least 4 times and had a site visit. And on a weekly basis, I sent an email saying, hey, we've asked you for clarification on where we can store snow, on identification, who owns the road, will the road be repaired? Which, as you know, we're still waiting on road repair. And I have not yet heard back from Jerry Glazer, but John Ryder's been very forthcoming with some information, and so we're waiting on them right now.
Right.
So
When will the potholes get filled on everybody's
Morning,
mind?
Greg Kierskin. Hopefully I got that right, from Vail. They were supposed to be here this week. They got rescheduled for next week. And the combination of the budgeted number for paving on Kirk Meadows Drive, as well as 30,000 from Vail, and additional 30,000 from Vail, and additional 30,000 from KCA. They're going to put almost $200,000 into repairing the road if the weather doesn't change and they can actually do it. But we'll see.
can we go back to snow removal for a second, Rick? I'm really encouraged by where we are. I think one of the things I've been thinking about is now that we have a little more clarity on the places we will be plowing from the contracts, and we have some more equipment and you have some staffing information. I was wondering how, if we could have as a board topic at the next board meeting, or even just some other forum, to think of, just to kind of have a conversation with the community about what to expect for this year compared to last year, given the challenges that we've had about, it sounds like we have new accommodations, we have new equipment, we have lots of things. And I feel like we need to involve our community a little bit, given what happened last year and some of the challenges that we ran into, to assure them and talk about, how we're approaching it, what we learned, how are we going to communicate, how are we going to be measuring success in the moments, over the course of the year. I just feel like this is an area that, we owe it to our customers to help them understand what's going on with this a little bit better. And I'm encouraged, like, where we are. So it's not to say anything negative about this. I just want to make sure that we listen to our customers, hear what they have to say. We're communicating effectively from what our plans are, get their feedback around this, and make sure that, when it starts snowing in earnest here in a couple of weeks, that we're in a good position. And I just want to have a really positive experience this winter. And that's my intent. I just want to make sure everyone has a chance to understand what's different and how we're going to be successful this year.
One of the things you said I feel is really important is some sort of service level reporting. So, it gets to be kind of people's opinions on, was it good, was it bad?
Exactly.
If we could measure some things and be able to report on that.
Like even like days since last, like I know because like you hear from customers, it was 10 days since I, saw a plow come through. And the next day is, for us to be able to have some more objective numbers that we can hear, that's not just one-offs from customers here and there, I think would just help us show that we're doing what we're saying we're doing in our contracts and being able to do things. And I think, other things that I've heard talked about are, my understanding is that some of the contracts now we have, if you don't provide storage, you mentioned that like we can't plow anymore. Talking about what customers can expect in that regard of like, how will we make that decision? Who is making that decision? How are we going to make sure that we maximize storage space as much as we can? Those are the types of things, and I know it gets a little bit in the weeds, but like, I think that's what our customers want from conversations I've had, and just making sure that they can understand those things, because I think we all want the same thing here, really successful year. And I just want to make sure our community is involved in that and hears from us.
Understood.
We had
Okay.
one question. May I ask about the snow removal finances, specifically the impact of KMA opting out of KMPUD service? Yeah, what I'd strongly recommend is look at the adopted June budget for snow removal and look at the revised August budget for snow removal. All those numbers are in there, so you can see what impacts it had. It's very detailed.
Okay,
Okay.
and then finally, just as some of the board members may be familiar with, October 15th is our final inspection deadline that we announce every year. We send out notices to the contractors who are digging into the ground, putting in infrastructure, water, sewer, propane, and so forth, that this is the last possible day that we can actually do inspections, because the weather changes. If we get a 2-foot snowstorm or a 6-inch snowstorm, it really affects how utilities are going in, and we want to make sure the utilities go in properly, so we're not running into nightmares 10, 15 years down the road for the next person. Which, as you know, Kirkwood's got a lot of people been in the ground and done a lot of things, and we find these treasures all the time.
Yeah.
So the October 15th is kind of our hard stop, because we also we need to prepare for winter ourselves too. So I think Brandy's been leading all the inspections and memorializing and documenting everything very well. And I think with Eric's guidance and direction for development, the organization of inspections and doing development in Kirkwood is better than it ever has been, having worked under Michael Sharp and Tom Haney. For in-house work, we're doing, I think, excellent work. So the problem is we get a lot of pushbacks from contractors saying, hey, wait a minute, I'm special, I'm different. And so we try to discourage that and prevent that, but I wouldn't be surprised if we hear some noise from some people who want to do one last thing before we button things up, and it's just, we don't have time.
There's quite a few places looking for a concrete pour. I walked around today.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
So I guess
anyway,
that's all gonna be tomorrow.
it's a scramble.
It's only trenching that we're talking about.
Yeah.
It's only trenching. We don't want any earthwork relative to
Oh,
district
okay.
utilities. Above ground stuff, propane sheds,
Exactly.
those sorts of things will continue, but what Rick was mentioning is just strictly the underground.
Yes.
We are done with the underground.
Trying to tie
Okay.
into a water line or something like that. Yeah.
All right.
That's all I have.
Thanks.
I have
Update.
a question.
Oh, sorry.
At the operations committee, we just briefly discussed repairing or replacing some of the fire hydrant barrels. Have we made any progress in that area?
We had the contractor that we've normally used was not able to give us a bid. Therefore, we have a second contractor that we're talking to right now. So
Okay.
our water operations person, Tim, is working on that right now. We hope
I
to
know
try to
it's
do
late in
something.
the year. It's just be nice if we get one or two of them, man.
Agreed.
Okay, standing committee reports, finance,
Nothing bad.
okay, operations,
No, I think
okay, planning, anything in addition to what you?
Yeah, I mean, in the report, I outlined where we are now. I think the main conversation, if you'd like to have it, would be on like the future topics. Right now, where we've been focusing on is how to work with our large propane customers in terms of fuel switching, getting
When
hopefully
you say fuel switching, it's also demand, management,
it is
right?
demand management and
In
fuel
addition
switching.
to
That's true.
fuel switching,
Yes,
right?
and so yeah, it's both things, because again, my personal concern is how are we going to make sure in the short term this winter we don't run out of propane if we have situations, and we're very lucky that we ran into had people reducing demand this past winter. So just continue that conversation. Eric has already talked about staff allocation of time for energy rebate. They're using the PBC funds, and so it's just a matter of getting staff time. So there's no really planning this topics until that comes back with staff time, and also the needs assessment.
I forgot to mention that went out, the survey went out.
Let's say that I was going to ask if that went out, so we'll have a topic on that, I guess. Probably.
Yeah, I don't know how long Stantec gave them to reply, but some of them were paper only copies, so we probably should wait, 30 days from going out. But I thought I'd emailed you. I apologize, but yes, it did go out.
Yeah. And so just in terms of other items that if the board wanted to give us guidance that were offered as ideas in our meetings was having the planning committee think about all electric rate changes. So like giving a discount for KWH potentially usage for all electric customers. And the second would be to look at the heat pump study in more depth from 2019 to think about again fuel switching options from propane to electric. And so this would be staff and committee time to think more about these topics. And what I'm asking for is guidance as to whether or not the board recommends that we move forward with and spends our time thinking about these topics as things that we would want to be thinking about in the near term, because those are the two main items that came through in terms of agenda topics at this point.
Okay, well, we could agendize those for next month. Take a direction. Okay, personnel did not meet. So that and communications.
We're gonna meet on Monday.
Okay. And then LAFCO, I'm not aware of any news.
No news on LAFCO.
And the technical advisory committee is already reported.
Right.
Okay, so and the last item is general discussion. Board members wants to bring up.
I just have
any
one,
topics.
just from the conversation earlier that came to mind today to me was, why do we have the meeting calendar as we do, in the sense of, my sense for the financial conversations in Bertrand's question of, last month, the way it timed worked out was like our meeting was before, like it was the weeks and Fridays of the weeks and things like that. It worked out in a weird way. And I guess I'm just wondering, if the board met later in the month and then finance could meet a little bit later, it would give time for staff to reconcile financials, and we wouldn't have months where we have board packets without financials in them, and we would why do we meet at this? Why is it important to do this? There might be an answer, I don't know.
Well, it's also worse this year because we moved board meetings earlier, quite a few months. Where we couldn't even have, we moved up the board meetings, several board meetings to earlier in the month.
We fit in extra board meetings.
We fit in extra board meetings.
Yeah, and it caused a
we
lot
moved
of
our regular
scheduling.
board. We had special ones, but
Yeah.
But
my
it
point is
did
that like if
figure out.
financials, if we want to have financials available at every regular scheduled board meeting, we meet like the second Friday right now, and like if we made it the third Friday, would it make a difference? I don't know if it matters. I'm just saying that we wouldn't run into this if we had more time at the beginning of a month than to close the
I
quarter.
think Eric has that.
So
I mean, it's a glib answer, but it's the truth. As an old German cowboy I know who used to say, "That's the way mein Vater did it. That's the way I do it."
Right.
So there's no reason for us to not change it. That's
Okay.
the answer. It's just when I got here, those were the days, and they have remained the days.
So it seems
Well,
like
it used to be the first weekend and we moved it to the second to give it
Before
more
my
time.
We used to meet every Thursday night.
well.
Yeah.
My point is that if this is an important thing for the board, and I recognize Bertrand's comment, I agree, we shouldn't be missing financials ideally in our board packets.
I think staff would appreciate moving finance and the board 1 week forward. From a staff perspective, and there's Tommy there. So from our perspective, that would make it a lot better for us. But we're happy to do whatever the board wants.
I don't have objections to it. I still,
Anyway, doesn't have to happen right now. It's just we're having this conversation. It seems like a self-inflicted situation where I don't see any real reason why we have to meet when we do in the schedule we are right now.
Thanks. Any other comments?
Yes,
Bertrand?
I have a few. So first, I was just curious about where does the trackless and the medium loader for the snow removal being purchased? Is it locally, out of state,
They were California vendors.
California vendors? And who is this?
I don't know.
Okay. And the same vendor, two different vendors?
I think there were two different vendors.
My other question is related to the organization chart. It looks it's been updated because Dave Waddell is not showing up, but the date on it say October 7, 2022. So is the organization chart up to date or not? On box.
We are in flux right now, so no,
Okay.
because we don't know what's going to happen with regards to.
Yeah.
So
Because the one that is saying October 22, but I believe you updated since.
Yeah, I
Because
don't know.
Dave Waddell is not on it and he just retired after the snow season, not before. So I think it's important to put a date so it's helpful for us. So if we know if it's an obsolete stat or how stat it is. So that would be my recommendation. I also would like to discuss, and when I was young, I wanted to see that organization chart is to have a sense of how much in Valley employee we have. And I already mentioned that at the previous board meeting, but I think we need to review our policy, and that include because there is remote work, there is housing credit policy, there is gas stipend. We want to encourage in-valley residency. We cannot oblige it, but we want to encourage it. So I think we should look at this single package because I see a trend now beside the people living in the employee housing that we actually have more and more people employees that are not living in the valley. And so my next question is, for example, some are reported as both commuter and live in the valley. And I think it's a kind of a contradiction. And in this case, should these people, and I understand for remote work that some people are doing that, but anyway, I think this will need to be revised. We change a lot of stuff. We need to have a look at the incentive we offer to our employee, the gas stipend. Maybe that should be incorporated in the pricing. I don't know. I really think we need to look into that whole package for staff.
Okay.
And my last point is I really would like to have our president, Bob, to keep the thing in order. So because I think the comment that made Eric Christensen earlier are out of line. And I think you should have intervened.
Okay. All right. All right. So the next item is a closed session with our legal counsel. Would that be on my Zoom account?
No,
Or
I
is he
have
here?
I have a written comments from
Okay.
them.
So we will adjourn to that and then close the meeting. Okay, we're back from closed session. There was no reportable items from the closed session, so with no further business, this meeting's adjourned. We'll see you all in November. Thank you.